definitely creating content that helps people is really the solution.
What really works is building a community, consistently doing events like webinars, and producing content specifically for certain categories.
You earn that raise and you earn that job.
Welcome to Future Fuzz, the digital marketing podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to Future Fuzz. Happy Friday. We are recording on a Friday today. If you haven't tuned in before, this is Future Fuzz, the digital marketing podcast. And I'm delighted to have Karl Loudon join me on the show today, calling in from sunny Cornwall. I'm not jealous that he lives in Cornwall and goes surfing nearly every day. Karl's got a fascinating career. He started out as a designer and then moved on to a serial founder and helped build and exit 3 successful agencies. Karl has created great cultures where creativity and commerce thrive side by side. With now a passion for sales, he's helped build high-performing teams and helped deliver great commercial projects, generating 20 plus million in annual revenue and helping connect to some amazing brands in both B2B and B2C. Today, we're going to focus on a range of topics, including selling with soul and also the importance of building video material as a business. So, Karl, thank you very much for joining the show today.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me. Happy Friday indeed.
Happy Friday. We always do this on a Friday, but some people might be tuning in on a miserable Monday. Karl, tell us about the stories. Tell us about the journey, because you've been involved in 3 different agencies and those agencies have all been acquired. So maybe you can just give us a bit of a background of how it all started.
Yes, some clarity on that. So 3 different businesses founded. One significantly successful, the others 2. Well, first one started out, I was still on the tools really as a designer, doing a lot of brand work, print and trade show design for kind of SMEs, bit of local government, that sort of thing. Never really got it past 5 people. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what P&L was. They don't teach you about that at design school. And still on the tools doing the design work, and then kind of getting to the end of that and then trying to go and find another one, right? The classic trap most people are in. And I didn't want to listen to people around me that were saying, you know, you're a better account man than you are a designer. Took me a little while to come to terms with that. And so, drew a line in the sand with that business that if I hadn't closed a certain number of deals, I'd call it a day, wrap it up and figure out something else to do. I had a great mentor at that point, Mark Mason, who was he'd founded a business before that called Mason Zimmer and successfully exited that. And he was coaching me a little bit. And when I came back to him and I said, look, I'm going to wrap it up. It's not working. He said, well, okay. He was gutted, but he said, look, actually responsive web and mobile web is becoming a thing. And he'd built his second agency at that point called Moobaloo that was on its way growing nicely. So he'd have founded it in 2008, 2009. And then this was 2012, 2013 when I started to get to know him. And he said, we're getting a lot of requests for mobile web alongside mobile apps. Have you done much? And I said, we have. We've been playing with it. We built a few responsive websites and a few like interactive iPad things and having great fun. He said, well, would you come in and set up a subsidiary to help us continue to grow and handle all the website, and then we'll handle all the app side? And that was a brilliant decision. You know, I learned so much from Mark and from the team at Moobaloo. I still have amazing friends still from the leadership team. And then we grew that, and he was able to open the doors to the enterprise clients, which really helped me. And he was the one that said, you're not allowed on the tools, no more designing, go and do client stuff. And so as soon as I started interacting with like enterprise level brands and clients and the chief technical officers or digital officers, I was like, okay, this is actually where I get more of a thrill from those relationships and figuring out what their problems are and how an agency can help them solve them than I actually did from doing great creative work. And then that was the success story where, so 2016, we sold the whole thing into Public Group. And then I went and had a good time learning about really big scale when I got into Public as well.
Amazing. So when you got that feedback from Mark, like back in the day, where he's like, get off the tools, you're a better account man than you are a designer. How did that feel?
It was funny because it would have been something my mother would have been telling me for years. And of course, like all stubborn boys, you're not going to listen to your mother.
No.
But having that validation from somebody I already admired and somebody that I knew was extremely successful and really knew his stuff with our industry was like, oh, okay, maybe I should listen to this. And And then also at the same time, the TED Talks came to Bristol. This is when I was living in Bristol. And the theme of the day was failure. So I had to apply because I was like, well, my first business has kind of failed. In my eyes, it was a failure. And now, but by accepting and embracing that and opening my mind up a little bit, opened up other opportunities and doors, which were then going really well. And so I applied, and I did the TED Talk there in Colston Hall to a couple of thousand people, and it was all about failure and what was coming from it. So it just sort of felt a bit like the stars aligning, and the right time, and I'm really pleased I did it.
It must be so cathartic to speak about a failure on a stage, because you've got a lot of interested people who want to hear the story and have had lots of failures themselves, but then you must turn that around for it to be a success, right? You technically turned a failure into a success there by doing a TED Talk about it.
Yeah. In of itself, which is a funny thing, and this was peak when like fail fast and that kind of language was rife in our industry, in any kind of tech or investment backed business.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was very timely, really, really timely.
Yeah, brill. Yeah. So my first ever boss, who was sort of a bit above my line manager in a company, without me knowing it, put me to the test. So I must have been about 23 years old, I believe, 23, 24. And I worked at a graduate recruitment company, and I was doing well there in the team. And then when it came to me moving from a placement position to working there like part-time while I studied and potentially full-time, he went and put me on a few tests, and then I failed miserably at them. And he called me into his office and basically said, "You're unemployable." I was like, and at the time I was absolutely gutted. I was like, I was devastated. He's like, "Yeah, you just got to go out there and do your own thing." And that hit me hard. And then looking back all these years, I was like, now I know what he means. And maybe you feel the same way about Mark, that he gave you that opportunity, right?
And absolutely. And I'll forever be grateful. And even going before that, so in 2008, when I set up on my own.
Yeah.
So I think most people that have navigated, and I'm avoiding saying a word like been successful. I find that an awkward moniker to apply to myself. But the people that have always moved forward towards whatever they want to pursue, if you speak to most of them, it's just littered with failures as to get
right.
Because I was working as a designer in like a high street print shop, right? Nothing amazing. And I had visions of, working at McCann or something amazing like that. And I set myself, right, again, I drew a line in the sand. I went, right, over a year, I'm going to apply for everything that I can possibly see out there. I'm going to go to these interviews and so on. Did loads of interviews. You're out there with your portfolio, you're doing the things, and you're always coming close second. And I got to the end of the year and I said, right, I'm done. Okay, I'm going to go out on my own. I've got these skills. I had one client that sort of wanted to come and work with me. He spent enough. His business was sort of small, 3 million manufacturing business, but again, who I'll never forget. And he said, I'll come with you. And I said, all right, I'll go out and I'll do his business. I'll do his work at night, and I'll get a job as a scaffolder during the day, because my partner at the time's dad owned a big scaffolding firm. I was like, well, that's this kind of fitness during the day, and then I can do my graphic design work in the evening. And then, so that's like one failure. Right now I've taken the leap and I've gone out on my own. And then 8 weeks later, the housing market crashes, because this is like September, October 2008. And then I get laid off from my scaffolding job. And it's like just one failure after another. But then you sit down and you go, "Do you know what? You've got these skills. Just get on with it. Just go and do the design work." And then you start to go through your black book or your address book on your what wouldn't have even been a smartphone then. Figure out who might buy graphic design, and you start calling them, and you figure out, right, okay, and then you start to get a deal, and you start to win some business, you start to do some work, and you start to get your first employee. Like, that's basically what happened. So yeah, whilst that first business was, again, for me, it didn't work. It was born out of a failure in of itself. Then that was, I kind of look at it as like a cheap MBA almost of doing that business, because I learned so much. And then that fails, and then I go and I find Mark, and I do that talk, and then you start to do this thing, and then I start learning what a P&L looks like, what forecasting is, what pipeline is, all these sort of things, how to pitch, all these like proper crafts that I would never had. And so I did my 5 people. Then with Mark, that Moobaloo piece was probably about 50 odd people when we sold it, and then started to step into then the media world, performance media and digital, as part of the IPG network, and then learning, okay, well, what does 500 people look like, and how does that work? Because I was always fascinated by scale. How do you make it work at the different stages of that journey?
Amazing. I mean, you like in that story, like going back, I mean, you didn't start out in that business development position. And when we've had a chat before, Carl was talked about like sales being a dirty word. And you mentioned there, also gaining experience and then moving more into pitching as well. So yeah, I'm going to relate this to your, let's say, idea of having you selling with soul, right? So this is something that you've spoken about before, and something you apply into your work. So what do you mean by that phrase to sell with soul?
It's there are frameworks and pillars and structures which I can unpack, but for me, it's an immensely personal choice of wording. As I said, one of the slides in my TED Talk was about, I think it was a little drawing of like a suit, and this idea that I hated the idea of being a suit. I don't want to be an account man. I want to be Don Draper. I don't want to be Peter Campbell. That was kind of the thought process of the 20-year-old me. But the word soul has followed me around a lot in terms of, so I used to DJ a lot, and I kind of started out life as hip hop and scratch and funk and soul and that kind of thing. And then enjoyed playing stuff that was at a higher tempo, not quite house and drum and bassy, but somewhere in between. And at that point, like big beat and these kind of genres was really booming. And I was trying to like understand how would I describe what my type of music was. And I was like, well, anything with a bit of soul. Like it could be upbeat and funky, but it had to sample something good. It had to sample a rapper or a soul musician or a soul singer. My middle name is Salisbury, like the town. So right. I ended up with a DJ name of Mr. Salisbury. So because it was fun, right? It's like, I'm not some gangster, but I play a lot. I play a lot of rap music. Yeah. But Mr. Salisbury felt like it just felt like it fitted. It fitted me, like the suit fitted. And then when we were talking about, after I'd left IPG, I was talking about like soul sales and what does it really mean? And I think this concept that in the UK, much like hospitality, we look down our noses on sales as if it's some sort of dirty thing. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people that are out there acting in certain ways to give it that reputation. But for me, good selling is a proper art form. It's a proper craft. It's not forceful. It's not some Del boy like trying to pull one over on you, because that's not real selling. Not in the B2B world, certainly. There has to be a clear value exchange. There has to be an understanding of a problem and an applicable solution that makes total business sense to spend that money on getting that solution to get that business gain or benefit. That's not forceful, and it's extremely strategic. And you're also selling to, 7 to 11 buyer types, whatever Raconteur is now telling us that there are X number of B2B buyers within each purchase journey. So it has to be soulful. You have to understand them and communicate and connect with them on a human level. So that for me is what sales with soul means. And that's why I kind of nailed my colors to the mast by buying a giant pink neon sign and being like, right, that's the hill I'm going to die on.
I love the neon sign. Love the neon sign. If you translate something you just said there, I always find it fascinating. Like, let's say the buyer's journey, especially in the agency world. So lots of agency leaders come on the podcast, lots of agency folk tune in, listen. And then, there are 7 to 11 decision makers now in these processes. And I think there's a fantastic podcast we did with Dream Data explaining that average sales journeys now last 211 days on average across various industries. That's long, right? How would you apply the soul interaction with, let's say, different stakeholders and also taking into account, long sales cycles?
I think you have to think of it as an experience, like a sales experience. We talk about UX and CX. And I think there's another one, there's SX, like this sales experience or the user experience of your sales journey, whatever you want to call it. And it's the same as a restaurant or any form of hospitality. When you walk in, there's a feeling that happens for everything from the body language of the person that greets you to the music, to the ambiance, to the lighting, to the smells, to the sound. All of these things matter. And the same applies to when someone, interacts with your content or whatever those first touch points are, right? We all know there are multiple touch points, direct to consumer as well as B2B. And it's about giving all of those moments thought and soul, to design an experience you would want as well. like I can be the best customer and I can be the worst customer in the world because I've got my standards are like right up there. And if you nail it, right, if you really create but I don't like being served. I find it extremely awkward. I don't like feeling like someone's making a fuss of me. I find it awkward. And that's also where I think great hospitality, great selling, you don't feel like that. It just feels like on an even keel. And when that starts to happen, people start to warm to you or warm to the restaurant or the cafe, and they keep coming back. And that's what you've got to design down that funnel or along that journey, however you want to visualize it, is those constant moments where you feel like that value is being added and you're not being served, but they're in service to you. There's a subtle difference, I think, with regards to how you can end up making someone feel.
Future Fuzz is sponsored by SalesSource, B2B pipeline management and sales growth for your business.
I really like the restaurant thing, definitely. I mean, I go to a lovely little restaurant where they're so kind and nice. They're Lebanese, right? Super friendly, super kind. The service is amazing. The food is really good. Yeah. The price is good. It's all fresh food as well, which is so important to me. My background, I used to be a chef. Not many people know that. But then what irritates me is they got these flashing lights in the window, like these Christmas lights.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you'd sit there the way, perfect. I come back all the time. But it sort of it's in the corner of my eye, and it irritates me a bit, and it's a bit tacky, and but that's just my perception. And if you go into let's say a sales experience, like I think SX is a bit tricky to say. Sounds like a sex, or maybe journey experience or something. I don't know. Or the BX. I don't know. We'll work it out. Is that if you're in an interaction with an organization and you're interested in talking to them, you're going to judge them pretty much at every step of the way, right? And it should be seen as the whole picture. Indeed,
100%. Yeah, and it's so funny, those fussy little details really matter. I was chatting to somebody recently about hotel room design, and I spend a lot of time traveling and I spend a lot of time in hotel rooms. And again, it's this very fine line about not being a pretentious idiot, but paying attention to the details that really matter, but also at the same time balancing what really matters. Do you know what I mean? There's big things going on in the world. We don't like, oh, woe is you. It's hard to find the light switch in your hotel room. Crimea River. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not. But if you're on the subject of that, like from a perspective of trying to find the most perfect version of that experience, and that in order to do the craft, do the creative people within the business justice, which often they're not geared up to do for themselves, like the chef or the whoever it might be running the cafe, or the creative director or the technical director in the agency might not quite appreciate the importance of the flashing lights or of your reception in the agency or whatever it might be. It's our job from a sales perspective to help fine tune those things and really make that experience and care about those details. And that can be the tiniest of things, like when you follow up after, if you did a virtual pitch or even an in-person pitch. For me, there is a fundamental must do, unacceptable to skip. A PDF with an email that's relevant and has some points from that meeting has to be in that person's inbox before the end of that day.
Yeah.
It's unacceptable to send it in another format. Don't send a Google Slides link. Don't send any awkward video. Send a PDF, because the chances are your buyer is on one of these, right? Just make it easy for them to be able to access that thing. Show that you care. Do what you've said you were going to do, right? And for me, the level of follow-up, if you're stood in front of someone asking for a significant amount of their money, or it's an important amount of money to them, you should be sending them a thing pretty quick, I'll often have that email written before the meeting and have the PDF ready, or the HubSpot link if it's uploaded to HubSpot, and fill in a few blanks, like what did we talk about? What did they lean into? Our slide 42 is where you really want to, show your CFO or something like that. Let's get a follow-up call with the CFO or whoever your sort of feasibility or technical buyer in the journey might be. So those little touches really matter, I think, and that can make the difference, I believe.
Karl, you've been involved in a lot of agency scaling. You've seen a lot of different things in your time. So let's maybe call this section from hustle to infrastructure, right? Because a lot of agencies hustle, right? And then they need to obviously grow to be more established and more stable, so they can take a few blows if they come along, but they can also scale when things are going well. So what would be your biggest lessons learned there? You said that it's something that you're fascinated in, right? When you having companies that are say 500 people plus. So what do you think are the things that you've learned through the years?
I think that lose the hustle at your peril. It's actually ironic that when yes, you do have to use the word infrastructure. I'll often use the word like becoming an enterprise or enterprise mindset, right? It's not about becoming this oil tanker that's hard to move and slow to act and all that good stuff. But because I can tell you, when you're in one of those, all they want is the hustle of a startup from a commercial sales growth perspective, right? Craig Lister, who built and grew Reprise, which is now not the brand, but the part of IPG that we joined that bought us, that was taking it from 20 people to, I think it was 480 people when we both left. And that like startup mentality, the growth mindset of I want to go find things. I want to go and try and find a client and win them and do great work and grow and retain that account, and the principles of just retain more business or win more business than you lose, that those simple kind of things will forever stand the test of time, no matter how big your agency is. At the moment, especially networks are, there's a lot of change in networks. There's a lot of consolidation over the last 18 months.
Right.
That's driving lots of, there are a lot of big brands leaving some of their big networks where that's going to leave a big hole in those businesses, which, is probably driving a little bit of that consolidation as well to find those efficiencies. That always opens up opportunities for, small to medium-sized agencies and so on, depending on what that brand wants to do with their business. But the hustle should never go anywhere. That growth mindset, that kind of new business is everybody's business type thing should always be there. But yeah, you do need to at some point build, you need to get fit to receive that growth, right? And that does become a problem. So you need your structure and your playbooks and I always talk about teachable and repeatable processes in order to do the craft, like do the activation, saying then back upstream to the strategy of, right, okay, that's worked, that hasn't worked. What do we do? How do we pivot and adjust to help this client? How do we remain agile, but within reason? You've got to let that media or let whatever it is activate and see how it performs. And then from the growth perspective, you have to start to put in, I love the principle of revenue operations, right? That concept of there's a whole structure between sales, marketing, how does it fit into the rest of the company? And that personifies itself in different ways in every business. And I don't believe, maybe I'll change my tune when I do write a book at some point, but I don't believe there is a book. There isn't like a one size fits all way of doing things.
Right.
The way that you might implement a CRM could be completely different from one agency to another. I myself was not a fan of CRMs back in the earlier stages of being more focused on biz dev. Slow me down, just get out of the way. I don't need to fill in this stuff. Just let me get out.
Right. Yeah, ready to go with it. Yeah.
Now I'm sat here going, right, what's the velocity of the pipeline? What's our average deal close time? What's the percentage of, ballpark to pitch to one, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's how you just need just enough kind of structure and but not so much it strangles creativity, and I mean creativity across all teams. It's a broad term.
Yeah, CRM can slow these tools and things like that can really slow us down. It's just very important to not lose sight of what they're there for. Shouldn't slow the team down. Should add to all activities. I think I'm really fascinated. I think this is a whole other podcast in itself, but the evolution of CRM in sales and marketing teams, because I feel as though, especially a lot of platforms have helped bring teams work closer together. So marketing output can actually directly see, are we helping grow the business with what we're doing? A little bit more having measurable results, but also for the salespeople that are out on the road, as it were, that they can then feed back. Well, I definitely hear what you're saying. I think it's a bit of a love-hate relationship for me as well.
I think it's got to be. It's like any tool or technology. It's got to make something easier.
Yeah.
No one downloaded Uber because it was harder then to book a taxi.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It has to be built around the users. And in this case, we're talking about a sales and marketing team.
Yeah.
And it has to, and the problem is all these tools come with a massive box of tricks.
Oh, they're huge. Yeah.
And probably for most, small to medium sized agencies, you only need to implement a handful of those tricks. But you can get clever, you can get cute with it, but it's just about making it easy for those individuals. And then the way we've got it set up now, it's really simple and easy, and it's not too arduous on everybody. But also one of the sneaky things you can do, so most agencies are trying to create some form of commercial culture. And the way we're trying to create that, when I arrived at Rise, everybody's out pitching, creating opportunities. There's this massive growth mindset. There's loads of people generating revenue and opportunities for the business, but all doing it like in their own little swim lanes. So for me, all I had to do was try and harness that into one place. And do that then by people. If you unite everybody around some form of like leaderboard, like once a week, not like a sales leaderboard, like who made the most calls, but like, here's all our revenue, right? So we're trying to make £1 million this year, for example, turnover £1 million. And cool, we've got a quarter, right? Okay, who's got some stuff? All right, cool, you've got a deal there. Tick that on the board, stick that on the board, tick that on the board. That's your revenue forecast, right? In its simplest form. And once you start uniting everybody around that on a call every Monday, right? How are we going? How are we get towards that target? If someone's over there and they've got a thing bubbling, they're not going to not want to bring it up.
Yeah.
So you go, well, get it on the board, mate. Get it on there. Like, you want to show your colleagues and you're all making this pledge together to get towards this target. How we get there, nobody flipping knows, right? So, but we're going to get there if we're all united towards that same destination. And that's how you do it. Then there's this desire to show that you're adding towards that pledge we've all made together by inputting it into a CRM or a spreadsheet or wherever it is. And then suddenly you get that buy-in because it's beneficial to that individual and you've done it in a simple way that doesn't slow them down.
Great. Love it. Carl, as we wrap up, you're a bit of a fan of video content. Anyone that follows you on LinkedIn will see that, and you've been stepping up your game there as well. How important do you think video content is now for agencies and any company, in fact, that's looking to, promote itself or keep top of mind?
Carrie Rose, our founder at Rise at 7, has made a bit of a monster out of me. Or at least I'm trying to be a monster. If you watch...
Not a monster, Carl. Come on, a poster boy. Don't be too hard on yourself.
I'm definitely not applying that moniker to myself. Agencies are always, how do I do biz dev? How do I do sales? How do I grow? What happens? How is it not just the founder? All this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And obviously I've been Ingenuity, doing lead gen for 80 different agencies a year, and running pitches with brands. It's a fascinating topic, which I adore. Like, generating leads. How do you generate demand for your agency? How do you make the phone ring? Right. And some people will be in positions where the phone rings a lot, and that's great. And sometimes the phone stops ringing and you've got to learn to pick it up. And I think what we have at Rise and what Carrie's built from the outset was a brand that was very good at doing content marketing. And it's hilarious, the irony, right? Every agency, website agency, or their website's a dog's dinner. It's like, it's your own housekeeping, right? And it's practicing what you preach.
Yeah.
And what I've learned from Carrie, from the rest of the Risers and our marketing team, is the power of content. And that realizing, and I did a video about this recently, to stop feeling guilty to take time out to have these conversations. Stop feeling guilty about going, I'm going to go write something. I'm going to write an article, I'm going to publish it, I'm going to write something, and then I'm going to do a video about it. Yeah, because our phone rings, right? And I will never take that for granted. But the only thing I can attribute to that phone ringing, so to speak, and because we get a great volume of leads every week, is the content we're putting out. We're not doing anything else. We don't really do much outbound. We're experimenting with different ways to do it. But, and I can't directly attribute that video or that like or that share back to that inbound inquiry. But all I can tell you is that there is a regular stream of enterprise and medium-sized businesses getting in touch. Yeah, I've heard about you, I follow you, as a brand or individuals. Can we have a chat? We've got an RFP coming up. And I go, well, I can't directly tie those two things together. And there are elements where we're trying to, they've attended X or Y and it's being tracked in HubSpot and these sort of things. Yeah. I'm confident we'll have some models by the end of this year, but I'm also learning to just lean back a little bit. Try not to be too much of a client. Try not to be too, I want to directly attribute my organic outbound content marketing to inbound. Stop being such a client, Carl, right? Just relax. Is it working? Yes. Yeah. So just get on with it. And regular posting. You kind of establish what are the key pillars of topics I want to talk about.
Yeah.
I really fell off recently and then got back on it by just refreshing those pillars of what do I want to talk about, and then just get on with it. And I did a brilliant accelerator a couple of years ago with Daniel Priestley, and he talks a lot about prolific beats perfect. Like, don't worry, don't sweat it too much. Just if you've got those pillars and you're regularly banging the drum of those pillars, you'll be good. It doesn't need to be perfectly polished every time. Businesses, B2B and agencies, the world is your oyster right now if you just start to commit to doing that and see it as valuable time in the same way as valuable time is having a coffee with a client or sending that email to someone you've not spoken to for a while. It's just as valuable, if not more.
It's also great fun as well. And I think you hit the nail on the head there, is that it doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be genuine. And in fact, if it was too perfect, it wouldn't appear to be genuine, and it would appear to be quite boring and stale. And I think in the creative industries and the media industries, you're given that, I believe, room to, be a little bit more rough around the edges, right? I mean, I've been to some agencies and the guys working there, they look like tramps, but it's cool. So it doesn't matter, right? I mean, I went to one in Amsterdam and they were constantly playing like, I don't know, some drum and bass when everyone was working in this open plan office. And it was like, that's a bit odd, but it's kind of cool. So whatever, and I think that's key. And it's great to see you doing it. And I do wish more and more agencies would do it as well. And
you raise a really good point that actually to enable that, to unlock that in your people, one of our key values is proud to be us.
Yeah.
And it's something we really, really champion in the business, but it does. And I've never felt, I'm a middle-aged bloke. I've never felt more comfortable at just being my entire self in the business that I'm currently at Rise at 7. And that speaks volumes. And then that means that my content will be different to one of the rest of the team's content and so on. And that's the kind of environment you're better off creating, because then you'll figure out who, wants to create content, who doesn't, who's going to be really, really good at it, who wants to more remain behind the scenes, so to speak. And that's essential, just being, proud to be who you are and being comfortable with it.
Love it. On that note, it's the end of the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, Karl, and I'm sure you're going to go down the beach this afternoon and catch some waves before the weather gets too cold.
I might do, maybe just a little bit, yeah. It's not to make you too jealous, but yeah.
Brilliant, Karl. Thanks for coming on.
No worries, my pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in and making the choice to listen to this podcast. If you liked what you've heard today, please don't forget to subscribe.